I remember the silence most of all. Not the thunder of the B-29s, not the shriek of the *Makasatsu ultimatum, but the silence that followed the blinding flash, the silence that fell like a shroud of ash across the shattered soul of the empire. It was a physical weight pressing down on the deep bunkers beneath Tokyo, a quiet terror that smelled of ozone and damp earth, a quiet that told me the rules of war had been irrevocably changed. I watched men, proud men who had only spoken in shouts and declarations for 4 long years, stare at the reports from the south, their faces pale yellow under the bare, flickering electric lamps. We had prepared ourselves for a final, glorious battle, 1,000,000 deaths to take 1,000,000 enemies with us, but how could we fight a weapon that erased cities? A weapon we could not even comprehend. My own hands trembled not from fear of death, but from the cold certainty that the beautiful, terrifying dream of *KETSU-GO*, the shattering of the 100 million gems, was nothing more than a poem, now a whisper against the roaring void. The Imperial Council room was not grand. It was a suffocating cage of honor and denial, and I stood near the door, a silent witness to the grinding gears of history. The heat of that August was suffocating, a mirror to the heat of the arguments. The Prime Minister Suzuki Kantaro, old and weary, trying to navigate the currents, the Foreign Minister TG pleading for reason, and the unforgiving granite-faced voices of the War Minister Anami Korechika and the Chiefs of Staff. We must fight to the last man. We must spill enough blood to force a conditional peace. That was the constant refrain that echoed in my head, a drumbeat of doom that promised only annihilation. I saw the defiance in Anami's eyes, a samurai loyalty so pure it transcended reality. For them, surrender was not merely a defeat, it was the ultimate contamination, the death of the spirit itself. They spoke of the sacred nature of the imperial way, while I, watching the shadows flicker across their faces, could only think of the children scavenging in the ruins above, the hungry hollow echo in the streets. We were clinging to a ghost, and the ghost was consuming us whole. Then, the ground shifted twice in a single, brutal week, and the illusion of control dissolved into vapor. The first blow, Hiroshima. We tried to rationalize a unique, terrible weapon, perhaps their only one. But before the words of denial could fully settle in my mind, the second report arrived, far more crushing to the military heart than any atomic fire. The Soviet Union had declared war. I remember the frantic sound of the teletype machine spitting out the news, * Soviet armored columns pouring across Manchuria, slicing through our Kwantung army like paper. * It was the final, devastating breach of trust. We had hoped, prayed, that Moscow would mediate a peace. Instead, they had chosen the plunder. The strategic cornerstone of the diehards' argument that a strong defensive posture would allow us to negotiate with the West before the Soviets could act was pulverized in a single, midnight declaration. I felt the collective spine of the military leadership begin to crack, a slow, agonizing, soundless tear. The war was no longer about honor against the Americans. It was about survival against an entirely different, unforgiving tide of ideology. And the clock had run out, the grains of sand finally settling to the bottom of the glass. The night of August 9th blurred into the morning of the 10th, and the council was paralyzed, a 4-2-3 split that could not be reconciled. The fate of the empire rested on a single, irreconcilable phrase: the preservation of the imperial prerogative. The Allies had stated they would only accept an unconditional surrender, and the war factions saw this as a direct, lethal threat to the *Kokutai*, the divine essence of the nation. It was then, in the suffocating stillness of the bunker, that Prime Minister Suzuki, with a clarity born of utter exhaustion, finally uttered the words that had been waiting in the shadows. The situation has come to a head. I request the Emperor's decision. Sidon. The sacred decision. I felt the air grow cold, the ancient walls breathing. We were moving into the realm of the divine, stepping over the abyss of tradition. We were taken to the imperial shelter, a cool, dark room. I watched His Majesty Hirohito, listened to the arguments, silent and still, his eyes fixed on some distant, unseen horizon. When he finally spoke, his voice was measured, high, and almost agonizingly clear, utterly devoid of the bombast of the generals and the desperate politics of the council. It was the voice of a man carrying the weight of 2 millennia of history, a sound both fragile and absolute. I cannot bear to see my innocent people suffer any longer. He said, and the words sliced through the air like thin, sharp glass, shattering the tension. A continuation of the war would only result in the destruction of the nation and the further prolongation of bloodshed. I remember my breath catching in my throat, the profound shock of his humility and his choice. The War Minister Anami was weeping openly, tears streaming down his face as he bowed low, his samurai heart breaking not from defeat, but from the realization that his emperor had chosen the survival of the people over the perfect, glorious self-destruction he had planned. It was the moment the Imperial Council truly broke. Not by the force of American arms, but by the moral weight of one man's decision to sacrifice his own divine prestige for the lives of his subjects. The emperor had chosen life, honor, peace over the perfect, dramatic ending. The final, terrible act was to record the surrender broadcast. The following night, amidst the chaos of the Kiru incident, the desperate, futile attempt by junior officers to seize the palace and prevent the recording's release, I could hear the frantic footsteps, the distant shouts, the metallic sound of pistols being cocked and fired in the imperial corridors. It was the death rattle of the old guard, a final spasm of a world that refused to die with grace. And then came noon, August 15th. The entire nation stopped. Every factory, every soldier on the front, every starved child in a Tokyo rubble field was frozen, pressed close to a radio, listening to the static and the high, unfamiliar voice of their living God. He did not use the word surrender. He spoke of enduring the unendurable, of accepting the unavoidable, but we understood. The empire had fallen silent. The sound that followed the broadcast was not a cheer or a riot or even a collective sob. It was a vast, unbearable silence, heavy with unwept tears and the weight of a future that felt alien and cold, a future where we had failed in our most sacred duty. I stood there amidst the ashes of the capital and realized that true profound courage was not found in the ecstatic charge of the *bonsai*, but in the quiet, almost unheard voice of a leader choosing the long, hard path of peace over the easy, glorious path of self-destruction. The war had ended, but the silence, that silence born of shattered faith and survival, that silence, I know, will echo inside me until my own last day.